Out is a half-hour multi-part series focusing on the LGBTQ community in Brandon, Manitoba, funded by the Community Radio Fund of Canada. This series will share the difficulties LGBTQ members have faced, the achievements and strides they have made, as well as the support received from the community. We hope the story shared will help those uncomfortable with any LGBTQ lives understand the opposite point of view and become more sensitive to the struggles they face, as well as provide support and information for any LGBTQ members in the area.
Hi, my name is Jan Eck, and I am very proud to help bring to you Out, a new series highlighting the lives of LGBTTQ citizens in Brandon, Manitoba. In this episode, we continue our Queer Lives focus, an attempt to hear the stories of LGBTTQ lives in the Brandon region. As mentioned in previous episodes, willing participants were not easy to find despite many efforts. I did mistakenly report that none of the participants that I did find to share their stories were from Westman. A quick correction to be made this episode, for in just a little bit we will present our feature interview with trans woman Maddy aka Maddy Nothing, from Brandon. I've come to know Maddy as singer-guitarist of Moledebator, a hardcore punk band that just recently and sadly have broken up. While having played in punk bands myself, I'm also fairly aged now, or veteran as I prefer, and increasingly homebody as the years progress. But that has not prevented me from supporting local do-it-yourself, especially punk and hardcore events since I came here 15 years ago. I think I caught one of Moledebator's earliest shows, probably around 5 years ago, at an Arctic Circle gig at the Elephant Room at the BU campus while I was on the beat for Puff Tweet City, a rad docu-series that I created for CJ106 back then. Just a bit later, I met them again at a show at the North Hill Inn, where Maddy and drummer-singer Daniel Prince were tabling their impressive merchandise. Maddy and Dan's indie shows, usually at the Park, East End or West End community centres, brought some of Canada's best new bands to headline local all-ages shows, and I personally rank a show by Iskra at the Park Community Centre as one of my all-time favorites. Other shows etched into my memory include the ridiculously virtuosic hardcore of the Uglies and the spellbinding antics of Saskatoon's The Faps. And it wasn't too long ago that I became Maddy's roommate for a while, and I really got to know her better. Maddy introduced me to the most kicking hardcore band I've heard since the 80s, the Coneheads. Next level nerdcore punks from the American Midwest. Think Devo meets the speed fury of Bad Brains meets some seriously jaw-dropping garage riffs. Maddy also introduced me to Maddy. We had many long discussions over coffee and social smokes, where Maddy schooled me on many issues related to the transgender experience. As a cis gay male with a proud history of LGBT activism, I thought I knew what the trans thing was all about. I had a very limited understanding, and even after much recent education, after completing this series all about LGBT issues, I think my understanding is still narrow. There is so much to learn, and I don't know if cis people can ever truly understand the trans experience, which is as varied as there are individuals. I do know that we can listen. So yes, I thank Maddy for her patience and her clear responses to all my awkward questions or misstatements in the past, as I do in granting me the interview that follows. Maddy is an astute thinker, a passionate performer, and gives so much to bring artists together that I am proud to introduce to you, my friend. Let's start with a brief introduction to yourself by telling us what you do, what your name is too, and how you identify, and if you want, your age, any family details or anything you want to share that way.
My name's Maddy. I'm 29, work as a cashier. I'm a trans woman. I lived in Brandon most of my life. I was born in Winnipeg, didn't live there for that long. I've lived in a couple other cities like Calgary, Winnipeg. Spent some time in Miami this past winter, and now I'm here.
Miami, Florida.
Yeah.
Not Miami, Manitoba.
No.
So you're a Brandonite though?
Yeah.
Well, what about some experiences about your life before you started upon the trans journey? If you care to go back.
Pretty depressing. Drinking a lot. Not really having any clear idea of what was going on in my head or in my life, why nothing ever made sense and why something always felt off. Just being confused and angry and sad and drunk, pretty much.
But did that sort of prompt you to form a punk band? Was that part of that? Your confusion and your anger?
Yeah, most likely. Yeah, that's like because it's always been a really good outlet for that.
When did you start getting into punk, for example?
When I was like 12 or 13, I started going to shows when I was like 14, I think.
Do you have any embarrassing first favorite bands?
Oh yeah, Sum 41.
Oh yeah, cool. When did you pick up a guitar?
I was like 13, I think. My parents got me a cheapest electric they could and a little amp, and it was like the best Christmas ever.
Perfect. Yeah. And so when did you start? Was Moledebator your first band?
No,
Okay.
no. I was in a couple of bands that I won't name in high school because they're embarrassing. And then I've been playing in bands again since like 2010, starting with a band called the Juicy Busies and Shotgun Party, and then Moledebator and Bucket Syndrome.
Okay. And that's okay. Moledebator is where I met you, and I remember seeing your first well, not your first show, but an early show that was at the Elephant Room with Arctic Circle and a power metal trio, which was an awesome show. So what year was that then?
That would have been like 2012, late 2012, probably.
Okay.
Like that was like the first year we were playing.
I remember seeing your shows at the North Hill Inn too, just kind of shortly after that, probably.
Yeah, I don't remember any of those, but I do know that we did play some shows at the North Hill Inn.
What do you think about punk rock in Brandon at this stage, right? You know, like, so you're playing shows. What's the scene like?
Non-existent.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's basically me and Dan and our close friends that feel sorry for us, probably. It's nothing like it was when punk was mainstream in the 90s, that's for sure.
Right, well, yeah. Very popular in the 90s. And yeah, it's so scattered now. We still have some punk bands, but they're few and far between.
In Brandon, anyway. It's pretty strong elsewhere.
You took Moledebator on the road and
yeah, a couple of times, yeah.
And throughout Western Canada?
Yeah, our first tour in 2014, we just went out to Edmonton and back. We played in Moose Jaw, and it was super weird. We played to like nobody, just the staff, the baristas at the cafe that we were playing at. And then our friend Andrea drove out from Regina to see us, but that was it. And then Medicine Hat, we played this super weird show with this like teenage grindcore band at a bar, and I don't even know how that happened, but we got paid decently, so that was like whatever, sure. And then hung out in Calgary and had a really cool show at this place called DV8 in Edmonton.
Right, great venue.
Yeah, really
a lot of
cool.
People came up for that one.
Yeah, it was surprising. It was like a Wednesday night or something like that. It was like the middle of the week, and there was tons of people there. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, this is chronicled in Rich magazine.
Nothing.
Or Nothing
Yeah.
fanzine.
Yeah.
So you've created a few fanzines in Brandon too.
Yeah.
Rich
Egg and Nothing.
Egg.
Yeah.
And Nothing. Yep. Okay. Well, when did you start to realize your trans identity? So, okay, you were confused and angry, but were you able to place that at a certain time, do you think?
No, not for a long time, because I just stayed drunk for a long time. But started to try and figure out what was going on in like 2012 or so, and like quit drinking for like the whole summer and got a clear head more or less, and started thinking that there's got to be some other possibility out there. And then it was like on my birthday the year after that I like realized I was trans, and I thought my life was over.
That's shocking, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty ignorant still too at that point. I didn't know a ton of stuff, and I just thought, like, I don't know, it seems like trans people have really shitty lives for the most part, and I thought that meant that, you know, I couldn't ever have a good life, but thankfully I was wrong, so wrong about so many things.
Well, I would like to talk a little bit more about your feelings during that time. So were you afraid of what you were feeling and the implications?
Pretty afraid of what it meant for like my relationships with people and how I would be treated. And
so did you begin a process of self-educating about trans experiences?
Yeah, I read a couple of good books that were pretty helpful. There's this one by Julia Serrano, Whipping Girl. It was really good. And Redefining Real by Janet Mock was also really good.
This helped you.
Yeah, definitely. Especially Julia Serrano's book, because she's like a scientist, like a biologist, but she used like plain layman English, to describe the different aspects of.
I read a bit of that book. There's lots about transphobia and
yeah, definitely.
cis perspectives. Really, there's lots of talking about why cis people might think the way they do.
Yeah, definitely.
So there was a lot of processing that you went through. Before coming out.
Oh, yeah,
obviously.
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
It took you a bit of time to.
A few years, yeah.
And in that time, it was a pretty troubling time, you'd say.
Yeah, definitely. It was terrible.
You probably knew that there was big decisions ahead.
Yeah, big decisions are terrifying.
And stressful, the unknown, right? Just,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What's going to happen? Really easy to be anxious and stressed out about the situations, and those anxious
definitely.
and stressed out can lead to a lot of more serious physical feelings.
Definitely.
Yeah. So coming out then, when was that?
It was like March 2016, and it actually went really, really well. My whole family was accepting, and all my friends, and I don't know, anybody that had a problem with it, I haven't heard from them, so.
At this time, were you seeking counseling or services from the medical community?
Yeah, right before I came out, I was going to community mental health at the town center and speaking to a counselor there. And she was really helpful, especially with managing anxiety. That was the main reason that I was there. And she gave me some techniques to work on, and it's just helpful to talk to somebody, just like a neutral third party sometimes. So.
Perhaps did you come out to that person at that time as well, before coming out publicly? You were able to do that?
Yeah. And I went to one of the free counselors at CIRC for LGBT people. I went to one of their counselors too, and that was really helpful too.
And the process of coming out is different for everybody, and it's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing thing, but for some people, there's a visible component of it as well. So, people, I noticed especially with feminine guys, or with maybe queer people of color, that the prejudices against them, they can't shut those things off. There's a visibility component, and you became a visible trans woman, so you had to deal with coming out in that way as well.
It's not finished process even. It's ongoing, on a daily basis. Anytime I go out into the world, encounter new people, which is pretty much every day at my job. Some days it goes good and some days it doesn't. And there's combinations of the two,
but you came out to everybody all at once, to your coworkers, your family first, your friends, and
not to any coworkers at the time. I don't think I had a job at that point, but I started working somewhere after that, and I worked at the fair, and I didn't want to be out at the fair because everyone there is terrible.
Very conservative thinking, very...
Yeah, just conservative, racist, sexist, homophobic.
Pretty anti-PC or just offensive for the fun of it even sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Know the type.
Yeah, there's a few really solid, cool people that do work with the fair, and
you would think
if you find them, then you'll be okay, but otherwise...
Carney's... Sorry, what's the proper name for Carney's?
I've heard it's showman.
It would be the show people. Yeah. And you would think that... I imagine that... See, my personal imagining is that show people come from all walks of life, that they could accept diversity a bit better, but...
You'd think so, but it's mostly the fair after it starts. The one that comes here, it stops in mostly small rural towns. It's somewhere in northern Florida, which is the South. It's redneck Florida, and then somewhere in Alabama, and then St. Louis, and then Brandon, Manitoba.
So there was, like you say, each day is a little different. Sometimes it's a mix of good and bad. And
yeah.
Well, what do you think transphobia is, and where does it come from? And maybe a good place to start is the difference between transphobia and homophobia, for example, and femphobia. Well, as a cis male myself, I think I've got it pretty easy. I've compared my life to my femme brothers and sisters out there, my femme gay brothers and sisters who have it a lot rougher than me. So there's always this thing that heteronormative people are attaching this value to a femme acting person or someone who takes on a woman's role. And you can relate this to homophobia as well. I would think that a lot of the homophobic people don't like that gay men take on a woman's role or a woman's position.
Right, from like a hetero point of view. I think they're all kind of linked by like a societal devaluation of anything feminine. It's always worse to be a girl. It's always worse to be viewed as feminine in some way. So part of it is probably a fear of being viewed that way.
I know for a lot of like gay men, we sometimes worry about how femme acting we are. Even we get a little concerned about that. We internalize this femphobia.
And sometimes because it makes you, it unfortunately makes you safer to be conscious of stuff like that. If you know not to act or dress a certain way in a certain place, that's transphobia, that's femphobia, that's homophobia right there. The fact that you have to concern yourself changing your own behavior so you're not met with violence from another.
We tend to internalize these phobias sometimes ourselves.
Oh, totally.
Speaking for myself, yeah.
No, totally.
We even imagine. I mean, speaking to myself, I imagine that there's going to be a negative reaction to my gayness when it didn't really pan out. So sometimes that fear is brought on by ourselves because society has sort of fed us to have that fear.
Yeah, totally. The fear that like you're lesser and that people are going to see that and acknowledge it vocally. It doesn't always turn out that way.
But a lot of this violence is real, and women have a lot of violence directed towards them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to say there isn't violence against men, violence against non-binary people, agender people, but like the overwhelming majority of violence is against femme people and trans women, especially trans women of color, and it's because of society's underlying femphobia, definitely.
And our ability to easily dehumanize people and take over.
Oh, totally. And yeah, racism as well.
And one of the ways that we do dehumanize people is like even as like the microaggressions of not using proper pronouns or recognizing the desire for people to be seen as a certain way, to respect their decisions.
Yeah.
So you can get these microaggressions that people just tend to refuse to acknowledge. They refuse to acknowledge the natural diversity that's out there as well.
Yeah.
That people don't necessarily, or maybe they commonly fit into two distinct genders, but in reality, the world is much more diverse than.
Yeah, and even the two genders of the binary that people are so obsessed with. There's so much diversity just within there that it just doesn't make sense to cram it all into two little bubbles. It's like, why reject the diversity of life? Like, why?
This diversity is like not just biological, but it's also our orientation. And we can get into that a little bit if you don't mind, Maddy. I think a lot of transphobic people, and even people who are not trans but are having a hard time understanding, it's like orientation is separate from other people, from a trans experience as well. It's separate from your biology. And would you share with yourself your orientation versus your biology?
My own ignorant self didn't think that was even a thing until like I started questioning, and so I hadn't even considered the possibility that I was trans ever, because I knew I was attracted to women, and like I tried being attracted to men, and there's just nothing there for me. So that was my own ignorance and rooted in transphobia, probably. Like the societal transphobia that everyone's steeped in throughout their lives, like subconscious level, in like film and television and stuff. That's probably where that comes from.
Yes, there's certain societal expectations, and it's all related to gender and gender expectations, and we just don't fit into those boxes neatly. Another way is expression. Women have and men have a various amount of ways to express themselves. Maybe they don't conform to masculine standards, or they do, and a trans person has that choice as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just really because of the society we live in. It's really hard to be taken seriously if you do stray from strict gender norms as a trans person. But then if you're like a trans woman who's overly feminine, then you're viewed as fake still. It's like you can't really win with society's like limited understanding of gender.
And this relates to the gay people as well. I mean, I pass as straight, so I understand there's a certain advantage of that, and trans people have their own unique experience with passing as well, right?
I don't think too much about passing, because I just feel like it comes down to when it comes to trans people, it comes down to like almost like a beauty contest at a certain point, and it's like, there are cis people that don't meet these standards, and you're just kind of throwing them under the bus too, and saying like, this is this because of this, and I don't know. I think passing is kind of a BS concept. I understand like there's safety in passing, and I understand that, and I would never take that away from anybody who has that, but
I agree with you.
I personally don't see any need to try and be anything other than I look the way that I look because I like it, and that's all there is to it.
The concept of passing, to me, it's just an interesting one to discuss, because society just tends to view people differently on how they pass.
Yeah, and if they're unsure, in my experience, if they're unsure of your gender, they will err towards male because that's less offensive, which again is part of the whole societal femphobia that exists. Because it's bad to be a woman, it's bad to be feminine.
Yes, apparently, society gives you these hints that does tend to say that.
Yeah.
And all right, we were talking about natural sexual variation and in biology, and also there's variation in our expression and how we even perceive ourselves to be. That's the trans experience right there, our perceptions of who we are. Now, a lot of straight people or cis people, that's it better, the system, tend to express themselves in a way that what trans people are doing wrong, or is wrong, or making decisions that are wrong. But I would like you to help them understand your experience with knowing who you are and what you had to do and why.
It's funny that like cis people get to assume that like their identity is always valid no matter what. They don't ever have to question that, but like I have to justify my own just for their amusement a lot of the time, if we're talking about on the internet anyway.
It's just a casual aside for them.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like their lives. It doesn't really ultimately matter to them. But I mean, I know with the same certainty that a cis person knows that they are who they are. I just had to think a little bit more about it.
We had to think more of it because you're probably encountering a counter-narrative all throughout your life.
Yeah, definitely. Like I didn't even know that any of this was possible for a lot of my life. So to be where I am now and like actually on hormone replacement therapy and happy and doing stuff, it's good.
All right, so we just talked a lot about the variations of expression, and yeah, expression is probably the most fundamental part of being human, is being able to express yourself, and you express yourself quite well with Moledebator. And punk rock is still a very important part of it. It's a very important part of your life. It's what is it about the punk rock ethic that attracts you? We're talking about expression and
I mean, I've always been a fan of doing stuff myself, and that's like one of the fundamental tenets of punk. Do it yourself, start your own band, start your own zine, print your own merch, do it all yourself.
Are there ethics in punk rock that relates to your trans experience, your trans journey?
I guess like a big theme in punk has always been like alienation, feeling like an outsider, and I mean, I definitely feel that as a trans woman a lot of the time, interacting with people anyway.
A lot of punk rock is also, we deal with the dehumanizing nature of society as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Is that like part of that, I Am a Mole, that song? Is that the title of that, I Am a Mole?
I Am a Mole.
I Am a Hole?
Yeah, that's about yeah, living in a really alienating place and not knowing what to do, why you're doing anything, what's even the point of life.
Yeah, that sounds like punk rock themes. Definitely. So, what's it like being trans in the punk rock community?
With the people that I know, it's pretty good. It's pretty solid. Like, everyone's really cool.
Actually, it's tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, you're going to be playing at the Park Community Center with the Faps from Saskatoon, which is going to be Moledebator's last show.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so well, tell us your feelings about that.
It's weird to be done with a project like this. Like, basically the whole time I've been back living in Brandon, this band has been a thing. And I don't know about Dan, but it's definitely like saved my life at least once. Give me something to keep going. So it's kind of sad to have it come to an end.
Well, why is it coming to an end?
We just don't really have time anymore. It was a pretty time-consuming band. We'd write like a dozen songs at a time and practice like 2 to 3 times a week, like 6-hour practices.
Are you going to be performing with other bands or solo?
Yeah, at some point, I'm sure. I've been doing some solo performances. I played a couple times in Miami over the winter.
Right on. And what can we expect tomorrow night, October 4th, 2017?
A lot of noise, a lot of feedback, and a song we've never played live before.
It should be a good night.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Faps are really interesting.
Yeah.
Scatter pattern.
Yeah, Mo's good. And then we got you and Nathaniel too. Be a good night.
Everything's just completely fucked.
That was Maddy Vilnick, aka Maddy Nothing, singer-guitarist for Moledebator, who has put on about a dozen shows in Brandon that you should have been at. I want to thank her once again for contributing to this series. I hope you have enjoyed this latest Queer Lives Focus. I have been your host, Janek, and you have been listening to Out on CJ 106 FM.
Like I'm falling. I've been freewheeling and being with you has been dry.